Welcome back. Let's look at something a bit different. Let's look at exceptions, how they ought to be thrown and how they ought to be caught, and why exceptions are confusing and how they can be simplified. Why did I create a custom exception earlier on rather than a plain vanilla system exception? I think that might be a really good point to sort of start with. We've created a custom exception, so a child exception missing product derived from system.exception or just exception, the inbuilt most basic exception in .NET. And missing product is an exception, but why do it like this? Why not just kind of go throw a new exception, product is missing? Why not do it like this? To illustrate this point further, I have created a little example program where we're creating a shopping cart. By the way, this is a console application, so when we run this little window, it kind of will pop up. But from .NET 6 onwards, you get a new console template. It looks like this. It's not a main anymore. So I'm creating an instance of a shopping cart and then adding a null into the shopping cart to trigger this exception here, our plain vanilla exception, product is missing. So then here in the catch, we are now forced to catch by the most basic exception type, which is just exception. Which of course begs the question, how are we meant to identify the particular exception that we're interested in? And if you've got a large program where pretty much only plain vanilla exceptions are thrown, the only way we can identify the exception we're interested in is by the exception message. Product is missing. Okay, this is of course a little bit fragile, as we will see. I'm going to run this and we'll see how that works out. Alright, we're coming into the right place. So we're identifying where the exception message is product is missing, which of course is we've got exception product is missing. Fantastic. Coming into the right place here where, say, obviously I'm just assigning it to error reference over here. Error is the string. However, you imagine there's some considerable exception handling going on in here. And if I was to run this through, we're going to see our exception message on the console, which I think, yes, product is missing. Okay, this is all nice and good. I'm going to stop this. Let's assume I'm a developer who isn't so familiar with the system and I don't like the exception message. I would like this exception message to be different when we don't have a product. I'll call it missing product. Alright, so I'll make it that. Okay, what is this going to do to our program? Going to run it. So we no longer trigger the if here because the message has changed. So all this exception handling that was going on in here before when the product is missing is now being bypassed. Now we come into the else, which might do something unrelated. Okay, this is say for all other errors, or it's for a different error and a different exception. So this is really problematic. Potentially, and very often, we would have broken our program. When it's easy to break the behavior of a program, we say it's fragile. Okay, it's a fragile program, and here it's a fragile program. If it's depending on the exception message, which can be inadvertently changed by another developer who doesn't think it's that important. Hey, it's just a message. We can end up in hot water. What's a better way to proceed? Well, how about we go back to our custom exception, and we're catching that. We're catching the missing product exception. I do have to kind of come back into our test and make the appropriate change in here as well. Okay, fantastic. We will no longer come in here. We will come in over here. Just to show that we're actually coming in over here, I'll say message. Of course, it's named a. Alright, let's run our new program. Oh, this is brilliant. Okay, we are now catching a specific exception type, and we have decoupled ourselves from the exception message. We're no longer dependent on the exception message. There will be an exception message on here. What does it say? Exception of type business logic dot missing product was thrown. This isn't really the greatest, most illuminating exception message. Not quite what we want. Maybe the business would want something more business specific. A product is required, or the product is missing. And what we'll do next is we'll go and take our missing product exception and expand it, change it to give it a exception message. I will do that next. See you soon.